Hey everyone, welcome to the SW Tech Learning channel. If you're preparing for an Angular developer interview in 2026, you need to know more than just the basics. Companies are now testing candidates on Angular 20's biggest changes, signals, zoneless change detection, and the new template syntax. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the top 20 Angular 20 interview questions, with clear, interview-ready answers. Let's get started. Section 1. Angular 20 Specific Concepts. Question 1. What are the headline changes in Angular 20? Angular 20 takes features that were in preview for the past few releases and makes them production stable. That includes signals, the computed function, effects, linked signals, and the toSignal function. On top of that, zoneless change detection moves into developer preview, incremental hydration becomes available for server-side rendering, and the modern control flow syntax, if, for, and switch blocks, is now the finalized, recommended way to write templates. Question 2. What is zoneless change detection, and why does it matter? Traditionally, Angular uses a library called ZoneJS to patch browser APIs like timers, promises, and event listeners, so it knows when something might have changed and triggers a full change detection cycle. Zoneless mode removes this. Instead, Angular relies on signals to tell it exactly what changed and where. The benefits are a smaller bundle size, faster startup, cleaner stack traces for debugging, and much more predictable rendering behavior, which is especially valuable in real-time apps like dashboards or trading platforms. Question 3. Explain signal, computed, and effect. A signal is a reactive container that holds a value. You read it by calling it like a function, and you update it using set or update. Computed creates a read-only value that's derived from other signals. It automatically recalculates whenever its dependencies change. An effect lets you run a side action whenever a signal it depends on changes, for example, logging a value or syncing something to local storage. Question 4. What is linked signal, and when would you use it? Linked signal is a signal that depends on another signal, but can also be manually overridden by the user. A common example is a selected item in a list. It should reset automatically when the underlying list changes, but the user should still be able to pick a different item manually. Before linked signal, developers had to build this behavior manually using effects. Question 5. What is httpResource? httpResource is a new signal-based wrapper around Angular's HTTP client. It lets you tie an HTTP request directly to a signal, so whenever that signal changes, the request automatically refires. This removes the need to manually chain RxJS operators like switchmap just to keep an API call in sync with changing state. Question 6. What is incremental hydration, and why is it better than full hydration? With full hydration, the entire component tree gets reactivated at once when the page loads, which can delay interactivity. Incremental hydration only hydrates the critical, above-the-fold content first, and defers hydrating everything else until it becomes visible or the user interacts with it. That means faster time to interactive, while still keeping the SEO benefits of server-side rendering. Question 7. What's the difference between the old and new control flow syntax? The old approach used structural directives, *ing-if, *ing-for, and *ing-switch, which required imports and sometimes awkward workarounds, like wrapping multiple conditions in an in container. The new approach uses built-in template blocks if, for, and switch, which don't need imports, include a built-in empty state for for loops, and give you much better compile time error messages. Question 8. Why are standalone components significant, and are NgModules still relevant? Standalone components declare their own imports directly in the component itself, removing the need for the traditional NgModule layer. Angular 20 continues pushing standalone as the default approach for new projects. NgModules haven't disappeared completely. You'll still see them in older code bases and some library patterns, but new applications generally skip them now. Section 2, Core Angular Concepts, Question 9. How does Angular's dependency injection system work? Angular uses a hierarchical injector tree. You can register a provider at the root level, so it's available app-wide, at the component level, so it's scoped more narrowly, or through an injection token when you need to inject something that isn't a class, like a string or a configuration object. When a component asks for a dependency, Angular walks up the injector tree until it finds a matching provider. Question 10. What's the difference between on-push and default change detection? With the default strategy, Angular checks a component whenever literally anything happens anywhere in the app. With on-push, a component is only rechecked when one of three things happens: an input reference changes, an event originates from inside that component, or a signal or observable the component depends on emits a new value. This is a core performance technique, and it becomes even more important once you're using signals or going zoneless. Question 11. How do components communicate with each other? From parent to child, you use an input property, or the newer signal-based input function. From child to parent, you use an output property with an event emitter, or the newer output function. And for components that aren't directly related, you typically use a shared service that holds a signal or a behavior subject, and both components inject that service to read and update the shared state. Question 12. What's the difference between observables and signals, and when do you use each? Signals are synchronous and push-based, and they're a great fit for local UI state where you want fine-grained reactivity with very little boilerplate. Observables are still the better tool for asynchronous streams, things like HTTP calls, WebSockets, or situations where you need operators like debounce time, switchmap, or combine latest. Angular gives you two signal and two observable functions to convert between the two when needed. Question 13. Explain Angular's router guards. Router guards run before a navigation completes, and they decide whether to allow it, block it, or redirect somewhere else, commonly used for authentication checks. Angular has moved away from class-based guards toward function-based guards, so instead of writing a full class, you typically just write a small function. Question 14. What are interceptors, and what are they used for? Interceptors are functions that sit in the middle of Angular's HTTP pipeline. They can modify outgoing requests or incoming responses. Common use cases include attaching an authentication token to every request, handling errors globally, logging requests, or automatically retrying failed calls. Question 15. What is content projection, and what's the difference between single-slot and multi-slot? Content projection lets you pass markup into a component from the outside, using the incontent tag inside that component's template. Single-slot projection puts everything into one place. Multi-slot projection uses the select attribute on incontent to route different pieces of content into different locations, based on a CSS selector. Question 16. What's the difference between pure and impure pipes? A pure pipe, which is the default, only reruns when its input reference actually changes, which makes it efficient and predictable. An impure pipe reruns on every single change detection cycle, no matter what. Impure pipes are more flexible, but they're expensive, and these days developers usually prefer pure pipes combined with immutable data or computed signals instead. Question 17. How do you optimize the performance of a large Angular list? A few key techniques: use the for block with a track expression, so Angular doesn't unnecessarily recreate DOM elements. Use onPush or signals to limit how often components re-render. Use virtual scrolling from the component dev kit for very large datasets, so you're only rendering what's visible on screen. And use the defer block to lazy load components or routes that aren't needed right away. Question 18. What is the defer block, and what problem does it solve? The defer block lets you lazy load part of a template at the template level, rather than doing manual root level code splitting. You can set a trigger, like when the element becomes visible, when the user interacts with it, when the browser is idle, or after a timer, and Angular will only load that section's code when the trigger fires. This significantly reduces your initial bundle size. Question 19. How would you migrate an RxJS-heavy component over to Signals? Start by identifying which state is genuinely local UI state. That's a strong candidate for a signal. Then identify what's truly asynchronous external data, like HTTP calls or WebSockets, that often stays better suited to RxJS, or can be wrapped using the new resource or HTTP resource APIs. Convert behavior subjects that were only being used for UI state into signals, used to signal for a one-way bridge from existing observables, and keep more complex multistream logic, anything using combine latest or merge map, in RxJS rather than forcing it into a signal-based pattern. Question 20. What's your strategy for testing signal-based and zoneless components? Signals work synchronously with Angular's testing tools, so you generally don't need fake async or tick just to flush a signal update. For zoneless applications, you configure the testing module with zoneless change detection enabled, and since there's no automatic zone-triggered detection, you call detect changes explicitly after triggering a state change. It's also a good idea to test your effects and computed values directly, rather than relying on spying on internal change detection behavior. And that's a wrap on the top 20 Angular 20 interview questions. If this helped you prepare, drop a like, subscribe for more AI and full-stack interview content, and let me know in the comments which question you want me to go deeper on in a future video. See you in the next one.